Toblerone Chocolate has a mystery hiding in plain sight as part of their logo. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett. Find us on Wednesdays on YouTube when we drop our video from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then it's always available. And, of course, our podcast audio drops on Saturdays. And if you go to focusgroupradio.com, you will find out about our partners and about TFG Unbuttoned, our Tuesday podcast, which is usually 3 stories that we curate, which we know you'll enjoy. So check that out. So, Tim... we are literally, we're recording this the last day of November. We are now at the official beginning of the last month of the year.
Dun, dun, dun. Month of the last year.
I don't mean to be. I will say this. I was recently in a class, and the instructor said something about how time is flying by like super fast. It was a range of ages in the class. There was people my age, some people a little bit older, and a lot that were younger. Every single head nodded in unison. Is it my imagination, or is everybody experiencing things just seem like they're moving?
Well, what's weird to me is the whole pandemic. It's almost as if a lot of people also lost 2 years, right?
Yes.
So, because I was thinking, when did our studio shut down? Was it March 2019?
Yeah, our last broadcast from the studio was
March
the week
2019.
March. I think it was like March 16th or something like that, or March 19th. I remember the next day was my last normal day in New York. I went to the gym, had a lunch meeting, went to the grocery store, took the train home, and then the next day, boom, it was lockdown, and boom. You're right.
You know, I'm still mad because the train station there owes me for the train ticket. Owes me for parking ticket. Remember I told you bill me twice?
I do.
Then he said, get me next week. Well, the next week never happened.
2 years gone by. You know, we had part of our Thanksgiving Day was Bob's niece was down from Skidmore up in Saratoga. She put it even more succinctly because she talked about her freshman year, which was during, it was late 2020 when she started going to school. She said it's like the lost year. And as upperclassmen now, she said we could actually look at the incoming freshmen, and they are woefully unprepared for the socialization requirements of being on campus. Some of them are struggling in school. So you're not kidding. There's been a definite loss, if not a loss of, it's not a loss of time per se, but it's a loss of experience that we would have had things been normal, right?
Yeah. No, I was trying to, and then 2020 was...
Well, 2021 was a blur. I mean, it was vaccines and then it was all this other stuff.
2020 and 2021, right?
And then Delta came along, then Omicron came along. I remember, I've told this story before. I will never forget standing on 6th Avenue around the corner from the Ziegfeld Theater in the freezing cold, waiting in front of a van that had one of those plastic meat curtain things to have someone in a hazmat suit stick a Q-tip through to go up my nose as I pulled down my mask to take a PCR test. I mean, you just, if I remember anything, it's that one day.
Did you hear how crazy it's still, there's lots of protests going on in China. Did you hear what they do there to the people?
Absolute lockdown.
And then put them in these kind of container villages with the whole family until they say you can go. And I'm wondering what will happen with China. I was talking with somebody over the weekend, over the Thanksgiving holiday, that's pretty well-versed in foreign affairs. And he said, there's only one superpower in the world. He goes, we think it's us, it's not. He said, it is China. And I challenged him a little bit about the military aspect. He goes, oh, it has nothing to do with military and weapons. He goes, we are superior of anybody with military and weapons, and we have a battle-tested force. He said, they are the superpower in that what we find out more and more is every time they send something to our country, no matter what it is, they find, he said particularly with technology, there's tiny chips that could be the size of an eighth of a size of a piece of rice. He said these chips are in everything, and they're just constantly gathering information. He said their cyber capability is unheard of.
Really?
And he said, and that's the fear. He said, so a kid's toy, he said anything. He said it's constant information going back to China to get into who we are, which is a lot of the strife, right? Let's put the country against one another, and I'm going to ruin you from within. So he had talked a lot about that sort of stuff. So
and that reminds me why the administration and Congress always looks at TikTok in a funny way because
they don't like
it's
it.
Chinese owned, right?
Yep. Same with Tesla. The Chinese, they're concerned with Tesla because Tesla has all that computer hardware in there. And the Chinese, on the other side, were afraid that we might be using the Tesla cars by gathering information. But remember the basketball? This was the Russians. Remember goofball Trump got the basketball from the Russians? That had a chip in it.
They didn't even need to give him a chip in hiding. They could have just put it on the.
He just ran his mouth, right?
The Soviet ambassador, Lavrov, could have walked in with a box and said,
it. I'm recording everything. Okay.
with a little Mission Impossible reel to reel.
Can I get a Trump Tower in Moscow?
Yeah, this tape will self-destruct. Oh, look what I got for you. And it just starts turning.
Lavrov loves me.
Yeah. Well, he spoke very kindly about me. He said some nice things. Whenever you read those interviews where he's defending somebody, he'll be like, well, they said some very nice things about me. Well,
very
okay.
Nice man.
That's nice. I like that. So you had a good turkey day. As we careen into the holidays, there are parts of the this Christmas tradition stuff that I really do enjoy. I'm letting myself enjoy Bob putting up the tree. He has a bunch of new houses for the train set. And my favorite thing, actually, I have to tell you this. One of my favorite things about the holiday is when I get to give tips, which is a very New York thing, to our porters, our doormen, and the guys that are at our garage. Truly appreciative, and
It's
it's
going to be a favorite thing for me. Isn't that a fortune?
It used to be a lot more in my old building because we had a lot of porters and a lot of people on staff. It's very reasonable here, and I got to say that they're very appreciative. And the guys at the garage in particular, I love the team at our garage. They're really, really nice. The guys are always happy to see you. The car's there. They love our new car, by the way. They like the new Taos more than they like the Alltrack wagon.
Really?
Which they now
probably
let me
easier
know.
to get in and out of.
Yeah, it is. And they're like, it's more like today's cars.
So you're on the condo board or where you live. So
I'm on the co-op board, yeah.
Or co-op board. So do you guys send out a recommendation for
Great question.
holidays?
We send a list of names of the staff, and we also provide people with the ability to contribute a tip via Venmo if someone can't meet someone in person. But we don't recommend anything. And in my old building, 25 years ago when I moved into our old apartment building, I specifically asked our doorman, Jarvis, who I love, I'm like, Jarvis, look, you don't have to tell me this, but I know some people give us cookies, and we like that. You could give us it doesn't, it's whatever you want. I'm like, no. There's a number. And so he actually told me, he said, this is kind of a standard thing I've noticed over time, and that's what I locked into, and that's what it stayed at for years and years and years. And they were all very appreciative of it.
So you don't know though on the co-op board who gave and who didn't.
In terms of residents?
Yeah.
No, we have no idea.
You
No.
have no idea. So there could be somebody who just decides I'm not.
there are
Jehovah's Witness doesn't believe in anything. So
And there are people that do that, and there are I've always just thought it was that time of year, and I've never begrudged it. I always think it's because they're here all the time. It's always a smile,
Right. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Because I often wonder here about the garbage men and those sort of things, but
I puzzle about that. Some people leave our postal people like a letter in the mailbox or something, like for the postman, or like a food item. I don't do that in general because I've never done that. When you were a kid, did you give the post people, the postman?
I think
I don't remember.
I don't remember either, and I know that they used to do it when I lived in Pennsylvania, because the postman actually really did walk then.
A lot of work, yeah.
Yeah, down here there's not a lot of mail, and usually it's once in a while somebody drives up in a truck.
And now it's a lot of
Dumps
junk
it
mail,
out.
I bet you get.
Oh God, it's too much junk mail. I don't know why they still send out grocery flyers. I wish I could just stop it. They go right in the garbage.
Yeah, but apparently it's still cost effective, and apparently it still works.
It must. They're doing it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe we got to send out flyers.
Well, I gave some of the guys at the garage some focus group socks, and I used to just be John when I came in. Hey, John, how you doing? Now when I get the car, it's like, oh, it's John Nash. the whole name, or sometimes I hear the focus group.
I did have somebody. That's funny you mentioned that because I had given some to my nephew, and they wanted to know where they could buy them. Brian always says we should sell them because we don't have the games anymore. So I
To
don't
give
know,
them
maybe,
away.
maybe we should sell them.
They're great socks. I found
They're wonderful socks, made
I
in the
found my
USA.
archive. I found all my the different colors, because I had one pair of each.
Right.
And I was like, wow, that's the archive. So anyway, hey, if you're new to the broadcast, we want to welcome you aboard. First, we open up with some conversation like we've been having, and we do a segment called Caught Your Eye. And that's where Tim and I bring news items that interest each other to the table, followed by a visit with our partner, Deep Discount, which we enjoy. Quick break, then we do the only show in the universe that does this, the Business Birthday, followed by some shop talk today, which is about not spending as a lot of money or not shopping as much. So without further ado, let's do Caught Our Eye.
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So this popped up on one of my news feeds. It's just it actually was the LGBTQ Nation news feed. And the headline is Macy's drops partnership with Salvation Army. So as you know, this time of year we see the red bell ringers are out there. They're probably all over Manhattan, aren't they? They're in a lot of the grocery stores here, and they used to be, of course, when I lived in Pennsylvania, in front of all of the different grocery stores. And I've always avoided them, particularly even back from our Sirius XM days when people would call in and talk about how anti-LGBTQ they were in the various locales. And so this headline, I didn't know that they had them in front of Macy's. So this was out of New York. They said the department store Macy's has dropped a long-standing partnership with the Salvation Army. The charity has been accused of being anti-LGBTQ, but has made a dramatic turnaround over the past decade, allegedly. People say that they've done that, but the jury's still out as to whether they're anti-LGBTQ or not. But then later on, I'm going to share a statement so you can make up your own decision. They said that Macy said, we reevaluated our cause and community work and made a significant commitment to driving societal change by empowering underrepresented youth in our community, a Macy spokesperson said. With this shift, we made the difficult decision not to continue our partnership with the Salvation Army this holiday season. So they said that they're doing, Macy's is shifting to something called Mission Everyone, which they hope to, by 2025, give up to $5 billion.
Wow.
Aimed at creating a more equitable and sustainable future through social purpose planning, they said. They're also involved with the Trevor Project, which we're all very familiar with. And so it goes on in the story to say that the Salvation Army has been boycotted by the LGBTQ community for quite some time, and it was based on a 2010 article that happened in the Bellerico Project. And they said that the evangelical church had this doctrine that was very anti-gay. It was also, they said, racist and homophobic. So the Salvation Army came back and they said they were very thankful for the support Macy's have given them over the years, and that they are not a racist organization, and they're certainly not homophobic. Have they made mistakes? Yes. Are they learning? Yes. And they said the best way to learn is continue discussion, and they need to increase their diversity. And they said, here's the quote, are we willing to discuss new ways to increase diversity? Absolutely. Discussion is what reasonable people do. This came from from Kenneth Hodder, who's the national commander of the Salvation Army. He said, but nothing will change the fundamental commitment that has characterized the Salvation Army for the past 156 years. I'll read that again. They're willing to listen. They're willing to learn. However, nothing will change the fundamental commitments that have characterized the Salvation Army for the past 156 years. Our mission is to still preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we will meet the needs in the name without discrimination. The Salvation Army is not on the left. We're not on the right. We are where we've always been, following Jesus Christ.
So,
and
okay.
Scene.
And scene. So if they were, Jesus himself, for many who know, has said zero about homosexuality, about a whole ton of things that the evangelical right gets to, they love to get spun up about. He was all about, helping others, showing
the poor,
love,
the disadvantaged.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this was interesting. They said they are denying that they discriminate, and maybe they don't.
Or maybe they think they don't.
But they think they don't. But when it said, but nothing is going to change our commitment, and
Yeah.
we're all about Jesus. So I thought, well, if you're all about Jesus,
There you go.
anyway. So that's that. So I never put money in the little thing. Do you
In
ever
the
put
kettle?
money?
You never
Yeah.
hit the kettle?
Nope. I don't, because it reminded me a little bit of the other one that I have a problem with is United Way. Most
Yes.
of these organizations collect money just to pay the staff. A lot
Oh,
of it
United
doesn't.
Way had for many
my
years,
gosh.
I thought that was like 60 or 70% of their revenue went to administrative costs, something
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
crazy.
And United Way used to get into companies, and companies would force you to deduct from your paycheck
Yep.
a donation, right?
Yeah, they tried to do that at Subaru, and thankfully
Pushback.
the folks there were like, eh. Well, so many people have their own charities that you want to support, or their own groups that they support, or their own organizations
totally.
that they want to support. I don't want to be forced to say I need to give money. It's like companies that force you to give to a political action committee.
Yep.
You got to give money to this political group because we sell widgets, and widgets are important for us, and you need to send to the widget political action committee.
I had a trainer for several years who was a long distance runner as well, Chris, and he and his brothers used to every year participate in a big event to celebrate or to support an organization called Challenged Athletes. Ever heard of the
Right.
Challenged Athletes? They were an organization that would provide equipment and prosthetics and all sorts of things for wounded warriors, for athletes, or anybody who's became disabled and wanted to participate in sports at a certain level. And it was just very inspiring. And it was like, this is so easy to fall in love with this charity, right? That's just
Yeah.
one of the ones that I contribute to, and because I just love what they do.
Right, and I think that's great because it means it's somebody you know, or
Yep.
it means something to you because it's somebody you know, so there's a personal connection. And so, why force you to just say you need to give X amount of dollars to this other group? So,
There you go.
yeah. So what?
All right. Well, what caught my eye could not be further from this, and it was a little bit of a mystery when this popped up. But in a nutshell, I saw a article, and the article's headline screamed, "Thousands shocked after child's discovery on Toblerone bars." I have never seen this in 50 years. So I have up, if you're watching YouTube, but I'll describe it. Many of you know Toblerone. It's a triangular box. It's chocolate.
I love the chocolate.
I do love the chocolate too. Toblerone makes great chocolate. I like their dark chocolate. And the logo has a mountain, kind of like a Swiss Alps kind of mountain on the left, and then the Toblerone, or it's right above it. Well, here's the thing. Apparently, a 10-year-old saw something in the logo, in the mountain part of it. And once he saw it, he could never unsee it. And it's been there all the time. And there's a story behind it. But I did a little research online, and this story literally came out 2 weeks ago. But it also came out in 2016. It also came out in 2011. So every couple of years, someone discovers what's going on with the Toblerone logo. So if you're watching, I'm going to show you, and Tim will see. So in the logo itself, there is an image of a bear. And it's if you look at the mountain that is the Toblerone, part of the Toblerone logo, and you look carefully at one of the larger white spaces, you will see that it's a silhouette of a bear. And in fact, that's been there all the time, and there's a story behind it. It turns out that the branding of the triangular treat is designed to feature a sneaky secret. The Swiss chocolate is an iconic brand, blah, 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 blah. But the logo, at first glance, appears to be a simple mountain, has a hidden image buried in it, a bear rearing up on its hind legs. If you can't spot it, then bear with us and look a little closer, and you'll see that the white creature nearly takes up half the mountain. The hidden bear in the mountain was actually conceived to represent the story behind the chocolate's origin, having been created in 1908 in the Swiss capital of Bern. Overlooked by the Matterhorn mountain, Theodor Tobler, Toblerone's creator, was allegedly inspired by the mountain's triangular shape and so created a chocolate bar in its image. And the hidden bear is a reference to the city of Bern, since a bear features on its coat of arms. So I know it's a stupid little caught my eye, but there we go. Do you see it on the screen, Tim?
Yeah, I saw this. There was another story that I saw similar to this where they went through a bunch of different brands and how they got their names and all the secret stuff in them. For instance, Amazon was one, FedEx, how some of the logos are there, and if you look at them, then you can never not see them again. For instance, FedEx had an arrow.
Right, that's right.
And Amazon, how they came up with that name with the hook of the the Amazon logo with the
swoosh smile thing.
swoosh.
Yeah.
So, you know what the swoosh means at the bottom?
No.
So it goes from A to Z. Amazon, you get anything from A to Z.
Okay, from A to Z. Okay.
So and they use this Toblerone, but I thought there was something else with the mountain too. So that's interesting. But yeah, this one had come up. I'd seen this as part of the article. There was a bunch of them that had hidden stuff in there. I always liked that. You had done some ads for us at Subaru with some hidden, what do they call them? Easter eggs in the ads.
Coded.
Yeah, coded ads.
Which, by the way, is a movie I'm in as a talking head for a minute and a half on Paramount Plus called Coded. About
You're there for
JC
more than a minute and a half.
I think it's a minute and a half, Tim. Maybe it's
Is
a minute
that all?
45. Yeah, it's
Oh, it felt like hours.
claim to Hollywood is. Yeah, thank you. You're very kind.
Hey, you're up for an Academy Award. I wanted to know if
Almost.
you're going to go out there. You're walking around like a Seinfeld episode without all over town.
I was just a talking head, but the movie's
townhouse.
about J.C. Linedecker, who used to do a lot of male fashion illustration and was himself gay, but he really knew how to get a guy. But yeah, so the Toblerone logo was I just marveled at that because, especially when I started going backward, realizing
Right.
that every couple years someone finds the bear in the Matterhorn, right?
That's funny. I don't know why the kid would be upset about it.
Oh no, he was thrilled. But
Oh, he was
but
thrilled.
yeah,
Okay,
thrilled that. Yeah.
I
But now, and
misunderstood
everybody's
that.
like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Well, who cares? It's the bear.
That's the point.
Anyway, folks, moving along here, as many of you know, Deep Discount is a partner of ours here on the Focus Group, and we would love you to shop with them by visiting our site, focusgroupradio.com, and clicking on the Deep Discount logo, which is a shark named Sharky. I used to do a lot more of that until I got a note from a listener saying, you could park Sharky for a while.
Why was that?
I don't know, but listeners, they have points. So I thought, okay, maybe we're leaning into Sharky too much. So we gave him a backseat. We even had puppets, the whole bit.
I like Sharky.
This week is, of course, Cyber Monday and Cyber Week sale because it's after Black Friday. Tons of things. Everything's on sale at Deep Discount. If you can't find the great price there, you're not going to find it anywhere because they have everything under the sun. And if you're not into any streaming platforms, you need to be getting packaged media of your favorite shows because they'll always be available to you. Yeah. So, Mr. Bennett, what did you pick as your Cyber Week?
Well, I was poking around Cyber Week, and under the new release section, this popped up to me, and I used to love this as a kid, and I had no idea now it's this old. So this is the Centennial collection, meaning that they're celebrating their 100th year. The Little Rascals, the complete collection of our gang. It just came out last week.
I love them.
It came out November 15th, 2022. Jackie Cooper, Dickie Moore, Darla Hood. And this is the full collection on Blu-ray. And they said they're celebrating the 100th anniversary of this iconic and beloved film series, The Little Rascals, the complete collection. And they said it was enjoyed by millions of fans over the world. Came out in the 1920s, actually 1922. And they said what's different about this, if you've seen them before, or there's people have had videotapes or whatever in the past, they said what they've done here is the restorations are magnificent, is what this review is. They said each short has been newly scanned from the original 35 millimeter film. It's been remastered, uncut, and beautifully restored. Now you can see the Little Rascals like never before, with restoration so glorious it will be like watching the iconic shorts for the very first time. So there's 6 discs, and I just think it would be a fun thing to. I used to love the Little Rascals as a kid. I always, when they
Tim,
would build stuff, I wanted to build
Yep.
forts like they did, or trucks like they did, and they made eggs one time. I remember in the kitchen, they're cooking and.
I think I see on the cover the dog. Was the dog Petey?
Petey.
Petey.
Which was a pit bull.
Which was a pit bull.
American
So
Stafford.
we all grew up watching. I loved watching Little Rascals. Now, here's the thing that interests me. The versions that we saw had been replayed. There was a fuzziness to them on
Yep.
TV because it was television at the time. I'd be dead curious to see how these cleaned up, and I bet how eerie it would be to almost have them look like they were shot yesterday in black and white, right?
Well, that and also the sound, because there was lots of like click.
Yeah.
Obviously, the technology 100 years ago, we've gone light years since then. So yeah, no, I think it would be a fun thing to have. It spans from the whole series, so it'd be a great thing to have. And
Complete
the other thing
collection.
about it, the other thing about it, which was rare on TV, was it was an interracial cast.
Yes.
And
I
so
was
for
just
that to
going to bring
happen,
that up.
right,
Yeah.
in 1922 is unheard of, right?
And also, it was a cast that came from different classes as well, right?
Yeah.
So all the kids came from a different background. I think this would make a great gift, and I think anybody who grew up with this would appreciate it. So excellent pick. I picked a movie that I'd seen many years ago. I often recommend it. I've recommended it before on Deep Discount, but what really struck me this time was this is a brand new mastering of a movie called The Changeling, which starred George C. Scott, directed by Peter Medic. Now, the reason I love this is that this has about 4 extra hours of interviews and videos, and The Changeling is viewed as like a really great scary movie. Utterly terrifying, a ghost story guaranteed to freeze the blood. These are what some of the reviews said at the time. This masterpiece of terror, and that's another review from Peter Medic, who directed The Ruling Class, comes to us on Blu-ray 4K, newly scanned, like never before seen, heard, or experienced. George C. Scott gives one of his greatest performances ever. I'm in the camp of thinking he also gave a great performance in Patton, but anyway. As a grieving music professor tormented by a paranormal horror that includes the best seance in movie history, and that's what Newsweek called it. Trish Van Dever, The Hearse, 2-time Oscar winner Melvin Douglas from The Tenant, and Jean Marsh in Frenzy fame, co-star in one of the most terrifying horror films of all time. Now scanned in 4K from the Internegative, with 4.5 hours, I was wrong about that, 4.5 hours of special features, including revealing new interviews with the director, Peter Medic. So The Changeling, and it's one of those, it's psychological horror. This is not where people are getting blown up and limbs are being cut off. This is one of these really good psychological horror films, the kind I like, and I don't see that much of anymore.
Right.
So that was my recommendation.
So not so much gore, huh?
No, a lot of stuff. A lot of just scary stuff that we loved as kids before all the gore hit. And we have a new release this week, and that is a show called The Offer. Now, this has been recommended to me a number of times by our friends over at marketing at Deep Discount. Lauren particularly loved this series. So this is about the making of The Godfather. All the behind-the-scenes things that went into pulling the cast together, the financing, obviously Francis Ford Coppola as the director. And I was skeptical of this at first, but Lauren was like, "You have got to watch this. The performances are great, and it's supposed to just be really, really good." So this is what came out, and I'm sure she's thrilled we're pushing it because she loved it, and I've heard from others too. So it's called The Offer.
The Offer. That, yeah, I'll tell you what, Lauren watches. She must have her home theater
5
going
TVs.
nonstop. I know she's like someone who's crazy with the NFL or something. With all
Now,
the
don't you
stuff she
think
gets to
though
watch.
that if you ever wanted a recommendation if you want any recommendation for a movie or a TV series, and Lauren knows who you are,
Yeah.
and has a sketch of who you are, you will get back a list that is pretty darn accurate for what you should be watching, right?
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So hey, head over to focusgroupradio.com. Click on the Deep Discount logo. As John said, it's Cyber Week, so there's all kinds of great sales going on. And of course, you could start your holiday shopping early, get it to your house in time, or send it directly to them or to yourself, to a loved one, or to yourself actually as well, to add to your collection. This week I picked the Little Rascals. It was just released last week. It's the complete collection Centennial edition. Aside from all of the full series, there's also a couple of hours of actual rarities as well. There's a reel for the for auditions and lots of commentary footage added in there as well. John picked The Changeling, which he says is a great psychological thriller, and the new release this week is The Offer on DVD. So again, be sure to head over to Deep Discount, start shopping away. Get there through focusgroupradio.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got a business birthday and a shop talk to share with you, so stay tuned.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to the focus group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Welcome back to the focus group. John Nash with Tim Bennett. And without further ado, as many of you know, we're the only show in the universe that does this, and Mr. Bennett sometimes stays up late at night and many days searching for the business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the focus group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So today, November 30th, of course, today's also, not of course, but today is Bill Gates' birthday, but I thought that was too boring. Right? What are you going to say about him?
I like the one you picked better.
So I picked, and it's spelled Angier, Angier, Biddle Duke, born November 30th, 1915. He died April 29th, 1995 at 79.
And wait, Tim, wait. If you're watching on YouTube, I want you to know that Tim provides a couple of photos for our presentation on the video. And like Tim always does, he shows a picture of a young, robust Angier Biddle Duke next to his, I guess, 79-year-old version struggling on a pair of rollerblades.
Yeah, I don't think that's him. So I will confess that it looks like him. But so rollerblading comes into play here.
Okay.
And he was an old rollerblader. So
Yeah.
I found an old man rollerblading.
And
So
he did a
that's
good
why.
job.
Yeah,
That's
so that's
Tim.
why that's there. But he's very handsome there. So, and I have him just listed as a bon vivant. So,
Yeah, but he's more than that. But I love the bon vivant part.
so it says, so he was born at a time, and I'll just read this because I thought I'd do it better than any of us can say. It said, it was the golden age of robber barons and debutantes, an era defined by madcap heiresses, round-the-world honeymoons, private railroad cars, Latin gigolos, champagne sipping monkeys, polo ponies, reckless scions, stork club assassinations, Cole Porter ditties, and patriarchs who kept and those who kept pet alligators in their conservatories. So, Angier, or Ange as he was known to his friends, Biddle Duke. Now, Biddle and Duke, two very famous names, was born in New York City. His father was Angier Buchanan Duke, and his mother was Cordelia Drexel Biddle. So if you can't get any more names than Duke, Drexel, and Biddle in terms of back to this American, in America that doesn't exist anymore, right? I mean, these very, very wealthy folks. So he was the heir to the American Tobacco Company fortune. His mother was a member of the Biddle family, which was a very prominent business and political cultural affairs family in Philadelphia.
Don't we know that as well?
Yeah, well, Dory
Biddle.
Dory Biddle was part of the Biddle family, yes. So he was so Angier Duke was, an heir to the fortune, but also his dad married into the Drexel and Biddle families, which was finance and prominence and culture as well. So he went off to Yale, failed out, didn't like his studies at Yale, and became an editor of a ski magazine for a while until he joined the Special Forces in the Air Force. And he was discharged in 1945. He was a major in North Africa. And he came back to the U.S. and he started a diplomatic career. Now, of course, his name helped him. You don't, drop out of Yale and just come back from the Army and all of a sudden pick up a gig. He ends up becoming the youngest ambassador in U.S. history during the Truman administration, the U.S. ambassador to El Salvador. So while people thought he was really just a rich playboy when Truman appointed him as ambassador, they said he actually really was quite versed in foreign affairs and represented the country quite well, and was also smart about capitalism, which they thought was important at the time as the World War had ended, and he could represent the U.S. very well. They said he was originally Republican. He later became a Democrat, and so as he was in the Foreign Service, he was ambassador to El Salvador. He became ambassador to Spain. He became ambassador to Denmark and also ambassador to Morocco under all these different administrations. The other thing he also was most known for, he was a personal friend of John F. Kennedy. and he served as chief of protocol. And he really said, they said he got most, what's the word I'm looking for? Most recognition. He was responsible for having to put together the funeral and all of the dignitaries that were coming in that short amount of time. And they said for him to do that, he really was in the spotlight, and known for serving and getting that together for November 25th, 1963 for the funeral.
Wow.
They said after he was an ambassador to a number of these places through both Democrats and Republicans at the time, he ended up going to work in New York City in a civics affairs department. But they said he was always very much he had one son, Angier Pony Duke, who was also
Pony? P-O-N-Y?
Pony was his nickname, Pony.
I'm paying attention, so I'm like, okay.
So Pony was introduced to this woman Margaret Howson in Alexandria, and she was going to secretarial school, but he convinced her to drive with him cross country. He's a very charming man, but he gave her gonorrhea. And they said this was the very first. Gloria Steinem got involved, and they said this was the first time a woman was actually able to successfully sue somebody for giving them a sexually transmitted disease. And she won an award of $1.3 million, but the Wyoming Supreme Court turned it over. She ended up with no money. But she said at least, it was on record that
something happened.
It was known that Pony gave her gonorrhea. So,
jeez Louise, right?
So Angier, back to Angier, he was married 3 different times, and he died and he died rollerblading. So he was in Southampton, Long Island. He is 79 years old. His wife was going off to the A&P, and he said, "Well, I'm going to go rollerblade." She said, "Well, you better be careful."
That's why you have the guy on the rollerblades.
Right, and they were supposed to go to dinner or something. She said 4:00 happens, nothing. She's still waiting to hear from him. Well, apparently he fell and then got hit and went through the windshield of a car. Was killed. So, it says his widow, Robin Chandler Duke, tearfully recounted the details of her husband's death. She said she had gone shopping at the Southampton A&P when Angie, an avid skier, had taken up inline skating as a way to rehabilitate his knee, wanted to go rollerblading, and she said she was waiting and past the dinner hour, then somebody called and said that he had evidently gone through the windshield of the car, broke his neck. She choked back tears. She said, but he did die instantly, even though they were there to celebrate their 33rd wedding anniversary.
That's horrible.
So they said up and down Park Avenue.
I know you don't make this up.
I know, up and down Park Avenue. They said the flags at all the private clubs and everything flew at half staff, and they, because he was such a fixture on the social scene. He also helped. Jackie O renovate the Blair House during the Kennedy administration. They said he really had a wicked personality, had a flair. Of course, if you're an heir to $1 bazillion, of course you can be very kind of bon vivant, right? So they said this one woman, I just because I loved her name, so I had to read this for you. Friends say he possessed a fatal charm. The first debutante party I ever went to was in Tuxedo Park in New York. Social leader Otzi Charles recalled. Otzi. Can
you make that up?
No,
right? All the Pony Otzi.
The first debutante party I ever went to was in Tuxedo Park in New York. Social leader Otzi Charles recalled from her Newport home. I sat next to Angie. He was wearing his pink hunting coat. I loved him then, and I loved him ever since. He was everything.
Wow.
So, okay. But Otzi, I was wondering, you should probably relate it to toasted oats. I don't know, oatmeal. How do you get Otzi, Pony? You and I have no nicknames.
We don't, do we?
No. And I'd like to be Otzi or Pony or.
No, Tim. This is something that's really fascinating. I mean, the closest I've ever had a nickname in high school and even college was Nash, my last name.
Nash. Yeah, I got Bennett all the time, Bennett. Or people would just say Tim Bennett. Tim Bennett. Tim Bennett.
My granddad used to say that a nickname was a sign of like deep affection. So how do we just get our Nash and Bennett names?
Well, my dad, we just celebrated my dad over Thanksgiving, but his given name was Glenn. He was named after his father, which was Glendon, but we called him Glenn Douglas. Yeah. But since he was a little kid, because he was a junior, his name was Sonny, Sonny. They called him Sonny. So it was Sonny Bennett. And we always knew at home if somebody called on the phone and they asked for Glenn, we knew, it's not important. They don't know who he is. But if they asked for Sonny, we knew that that's somebody that's in the inner circle. That's a. If you call him Glenn, you're an outsider.
Marianne's dad,
Alfie.
Just Alf. So, but his
real name was Alfio.
So people at town hall would maybe call him Alfio, or was he
Al.
just known as Alfie or Al?
Alfie or
That's
Al.
right.
Al Candido.
Okay.
Well, you know, so it was interesting with Mr. Candido. I remember him saying this. He was different in that he had a very ethnic name, right sounding name, Alfio
Yes,
Candido. So he wanted to, a lot of people, that's why there were so many, when you look at kids from the 60s, from immigrants, from grandparents that came over, it was John, Tim, Michael, Eric, David. You know, we were very, you can tell when people were born by their name, Jennifer, Lori. The names were very much traditional names and very English, plain names, I guess. Unlike now, where the names are far more flourished, I guess. So I don't know where you got from that tangent.
Wow.
But I think we should have nicknames. And maybe it's too late. I had one in college. I really don't want to repeat it. It was politically incorrect. But I don't know if it was politically incorrect, but I used to fall a lot. So they used to call me. They tried using Tripper, that never stuck. But they used another name for somebody who would be physically disabled if you had a problem walking.
Yeah, no, and that would be so the closest I've come to a nickname was college freshman year. Our dorm used to put on a dorm show that everybody around campus used to come watch it, and we did a performance of Grease, and then I did a comedy routine. I did a Mr. Rogers sketch with Paul and Greg. For many years, at least until a couple graduating classes, I would be somewhere on campus and someone would go, "Hey, Mr. Rogers,"
or Mr. Bill.
But that's the closest. And I have to think about the nickname thing because I don't remember really having one. Right?
Yeah, I was in a fraternity and there were a lot of Greek names. We do these rituals, and this friend of mine, Damien, we gave each other, because a lot of the names had an "ius" at the end. So I would call him Damius. He would call me Tamius. But that was just little pet names that never went anywhere. But yeah, no, I never had a nickname. I'm kind of upset about it now. I'd like Oatsy, Bootsy, Pony. I don't know what you could be. What's your middle name?
Thomas. Well, actually,
and I'm Joseph, right? Again,
so you used to be T. Like I know Marianne's mom used to call you me JT, you TJ, JT TJ. But there I see. Yeah,
TJ never stuck. JT never stuck.
Oatsy is different.
Nothing
right?
stuck. Oatsy Nash. We're gonna come up with a name. Well, it's too late. I think we're too old for nicknames. Don't you?
I think no, you're never too old for a nickname.
I would almost open it up to the audience to say, if you think we should have nicknames, which can you imagine what will come in? But
I'm almost afraid because the last comment that we got in about me laughing on the microphone was scary almost, and it made me change my performance a bit.
You just need to be you, John. Don't worry about what anybody says. Remember, they say do not read the reviews. If we read the reviews, we would have been off 15 years ago.
If someone's having a bad audio experience, I want them to have a better one. All right,
how much did we used to get in trouble for calling the girls at Sirius XM?
Constantly.
Come on,
and
girls.
you know what? And even though they were in the booth on the mic and they would scream into the mic, we don't mind. We're here. We like.
How are you girls doing today? We're doing great.
Yeah.
Katie
we got in trouble.
Katie and Sweet Caroline and
the days and Funky Medina.
Monkey Cole Medina, loved her.
She
was the best on the phone, boy. She and Shaq. How about Shaq with that voice? Shaq's sexy voice. People.
Shaq could hop on and be on the show with us.
My gosh.
But we had great people on.
We were lucky. Yeah.
And I think of some of the girls. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to be insulting, but our female associates. Many of them went in nursing was one big thing.
Yeah.
Many of them, some of them have beautiful families now. I mean, just super great people. All right, moving along, we have a quick shop talk, and I say quick because we can move through. This is something that sang to me because this is Tim, you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, this is you all over. You could have written this.
It's an article that came to me from, I think it might have been NPR or Vox, the case for buying less and how to actually do it. So buying fewer unnecessary items is a good for the planet thing. It's good for your wallet and it's good for your brain. I read the whole article. This could be summed up into a series of rules or steps that you want to abide by when it comes to consuming. And for me, I'll just put it to you this way. I just got 3 new shirts. It was one of these deals from Charles Turret, 3 for $99. That's usually when I buy things. The minute I got them, I panicked because I now need to get rid of 4 or 5 shirts. I can't,
Now,
I'm just not going to.
were they 3 of the same color or same
No,
style?
no.
Or?
There was a blue one with a diamond pattern. There's a green and like a striped shirt, and then I had used to have this purple and white check shirt years ago. It got damaged, so I kind of replaced that. But no, it complements the wardrobe, but I can't keep.
So the reason I'm asking, so if you got rid of something, would you replace a stripe with a stripe or a pattern with a pattern? Or
You're
a
absolutely right,
solid?
Tim.
Okay.
And that's something I discovered a while ago. So I get tired of a certain shirt, but I might replace it with a similar style, like a plaid or something like that. Bob laughs. He was in the bedroom last night. I was unpacking these shirts, and I've panicked. I'm like, I have to get rid of 3 or 4 shirts to have the hangers. And he just shook his head. He goes, "You got 5 empty hangers, right?" I'm like, "No, those are those are for other things." But in a nutshell, this comes down to want versus need, and many of us, whether we know it or not, are driven by the impulse of want as opposed to actually need. And when you really get it down to need, what do you really need, right? I mean, we do love shopping. We like buying ourselves things, and I'm not going to discount that. But there's a couple rules they have in here about how to proceed with maybe buying less, right?
Well, I laughed when I got dressed today because if you're watching in the video, I've got this plaid shirt on, which I laughed because this would have been long gone if you had it. It's 26 years old. And I bought it in Boston. I still remember I bought it in Boston on a trip when I went with our friend Scott and to see Doug Spencer.
Yep.
And I bought this shirt at the Ralph Polo store up there. And
but I know that store, and I know that, and I know exactly where you went to get this, right?
Yeah. And I wear it now. I don't wear it all the time, but I wear it probably 3 or 4 times in the winter. But by reading this, by going through this here, I think it might have survived, it might not have survived. Because one of the things she says is, which I thought was smart with clothes in particular, was to put all your hangers the opposite way.
Yes.
And then when you do use something, you put the hanger back, you hang it back the right way. And then everything that's been turned, that's not been turned, means you haven't worn it in a year and you need to get rid of it, or you could get rid of it, which I thought was smart.
Particularly clever, huh?
Yeah, I thought that was a real smart one because I do have, and having just moved recently, I got rid of a lot, but I did bring stuff that I've not worn yet here, and I'm wondering, do I need to keep it? You'd say no. You probably wouldn't even brought it down. You probably wouldn't have made the trip.
Tim, I almost think I have a problem. Well,
I won't disagree.
Because, my sister sent me a book for my birthday that I do want to read. It reminds me of that episode of Absolutely Fabulous where Eddie and Adina go to that woman's house that's all white. Everything's white. And they bring a bottle of wine, and the hostess has no idea where to put it. And she's walking around. She'd go in this corner here because everything had a place, right? That's exactly how I feel about this book that I just got. And I just ordered a paperback that I'm reading. And I'm like, where is this going to go? I should clean off the bookshelf. I have to make room. You could almost become crazy with it. But I love the hanger thing. So let's go through a couple other things here. So one of the things that was right in the middle or the beginning of this was choose items you need for the long haul. So when you're going shopping and you need to buy something, choose things that are going to be with you for a long time. The shirt that Tim's wearing today that has a special memory attached to it, that could be long haul. I have no problem with that, right?
Well, it's certainly good quality.
Yeah.
And if it was a junky, crappy shirt, and then nobody would probably tell you that it's 26 years old, but if it was not made well yet, it would probably go away. I wondered about this, though, when it said, for instance, if there was a seasonal thing. So if you were going, particularly for women, I always feel sorry for women a lot of times because men can get away with wearing a blue suit for 3 days in a row, just change the shirt. But a woman, they've got to constantly change their wardrobe. And they talked about this special occasion stuff, right? About how if you bought something, you probably shouldn't, you need to get more out of it than just one use. Was that?
Do you happen to remember one of our Christmas parties at Sirius? I was obsessed with buying a vest.
Yes.
And I went to, like, I forget what it was, Paul Stewart. It was like an $800 vest. Do you know, I think I've worn it twice in my life. I look at that vest and I cringe because I broke every rule in the book to have that. But I enjoyed it the day I wore it, right?
Right. It says when you purchase something for an occasion or a specific one-time use, it can quickly turn into clutter. I like to invest in staple items that are meant to last a long time. But that vest would last for a long time. I'm sure you could wear it now and it'd be fine.
Maybe a button would pop off, but...
No, but would you wear it again?
I've worn it, yeah, and I've worn it, and Bob finally put me wise one day. He said, you could wear that a lot more than you do if you change the shirt underneath it, so I do wear it for holiday stuff. I said earlier when we were talking about this and setting it up, change your buying language when it comes to want versus need. I can guarantee that most of us have all the jeans and jackets that we need. Instead, we should channel our preschool vocabulary lessons that taught us to distinguish between wants and needs. I want a new pair of jeans. I want a new jacket. Once you change your language, the item ceases to have as much power over you. It stops being a necessity and starts being a craving. So do you need it or do you want it? And yeah, so that's one rule there, right?
Right, and that one rolls right into the other one, which is build in a time to curb your impulse purchase. So in other words, if you said I want to, John says the want and need thing, but if you say, oh, I want a new sweater or something, and then you think about it, and maybe you wait a day or you don't make such an impulse purchase on an appliance or a gadget or something, you might say, you know what, I can make do, or I can make something else do, or I can figure it out. I was with my mom over the weekend, and we were in a store, and there was this great sweater. I was like, oh my God, I love this. And I couldn't decide between the blue and the maroon, and I liked them both, and it was a great price. And I'm holding them up, and this one might fit. And my mother's looking at me, and she's like, what's wrong? And I said, well, I already have a bunch of sweaters. She said, put them back. She said, you don't need them.
Yeah, your mom.
But I thought, well, this would look nice with, and it's something different. I have these sweaters that I wear all the time, and she was right. I didn't need them. So
look, I'm not going to soft pedal this. This takes a lot of fun out of being a consumer. This takes almost all the fun out, because if everything you buy is something you need, as opposed to but going to this rule for a minute, my granddad, when we were kids, he would take us to the store, the toy store, Child World or something like that, right? And we would go crazy. And then he would impose the 24-hour rule. Now, my grandparents would visit us for a couple of weeks at a time. So we would go to the store. I would find at least 5 things I had to have. And he'd be like, okay, Johnny, here's the deal. We're going to come back tomorrow, and we're going to get one thing. So it's the one thing you really want. And so do you know that after 24 hours, I would forget about at least 4 of the items, but have a fixation on one thing, and that's the toy that I would get. And I would ultimately enjoy it a great deal. So 24-hour rule. Yeah.
That was smart. And then
Granddad, my mom's dad, know what items you already have. Simple Simon, right? This is pretty straightforward stuff. It's like what Tim was just talking about with his mom. Okay, you have 5 sweaters. You have a couple different colors. Yeah. Do you really need the 6th or the 7th?
No,
kind of, yeah. And I think that rule's pretty much summed up right there, right?
Yeah. And then the last one was take a break to assess your shopping habits. And this woman put together, one of these financial folks put together a no-spend year. She said she saved up to $16,000, which I thought was incredible.
Wow!
By not spending, and she said a lot of times if she felt she needed or wanted something, she'd either ask a friend if they had it and she could borrow it, or did she have something else she could repurpose? Could she go to a secondhand store and find something? For instance, if you wanted a crock pot, rather than going to buy a new crock, I'm just making this
borrowing
up.
That, yeah.
But you either borrow it or you can go to a secondhand store and probably get one for $3, and or repurposing something that and have it make do. But they said that she wound up saving $16,000, which is no small chunk of change. You probably have saved a lot by that because, again, you don't you're not the type you could travel somewhere and just buy something, and you've always been very good about that.
I will say this. Some of my habits are not cheap. And what I mean by that is, and you and I have talked about this frequently when you were doing more rowing, our chosen sports, like Tim rows and I'm a cyclist, they're not cheap. Like when I buy a new jersey or I have to
Right.
buy some clothing or a repair on the bike could be a couple $100. It's not as bad as a car, but it makes me pause because it's like, oh, if I really want to do this sport. A couple years ago, I bought an indoor trainer that I could hook my bike up to. It's the best thing for the winter. I love it.
Did you
But
hook it up yet, by the way?
This I have to hook it up this week and calibrate it. But I regretted the purchase for about 3 months because I just thought, how could I have spent this $800 or whatever it was, and now I can't really live without it during the winter. So I'm just wired a different way. But Tim, honestly, when I was younger and out of college, I would buy anything I wanted. Like we would go to Forbidden Planet, like a science fiction store, and Greg and I would see a model of the robot from the movie Metropolis. We have to have that. I don't know why. We would buy these like $100 thing, would sit on a shelf for a while, and then you forget about it. But
Right.
that's what you do when you're young, right?
Yeah. No, I've always known you to be pretty smart with your money, but that's because you earned it. So, and I think it's different when you earn it sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And you're not Angier Duke Biddle Duke, which you were given all the
Or Pony or Oatsy.
Pony or Oatsy. I think you could be Pony.
I could be Pony.
Pony Nash. Oatsy Bennett and Pony Nash. That'll be our, maybe we'll do a drag show. Oatsy and Pony show.
Yeah, on the horse front, I think I've told you this before. We went to Saratoga once years ago, and I'll bet $2 or $3 on a name. And the name that I picked that day for a horse race the horse was named Bigger is Better. And as the horses took off and they came around the turn, the announcer starts saying, it's bigger is better. It's bigger is better by a length. And everybody in the stands starts standing up with their tickets, screaming, bigger is better.
Oh my God, that would be a great
The
film.
horse finishes, it wins, it crosses the finish line. Bob's mother's appalled. Bob's appalled. I'm laughing, and I said, the owner of that horse knew what they were doing, right? Bigger is better. So maybe that's my nickname.
I like that. That's a good one. I've not heard that.
It's a good one, right?
You always have new stories, Mr. Nash.
There you go. Well, that's what keeps it fresh.
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you spending time with us. And, you can go to focusgroupradio.com, learn all about us, find all of our shows there, including our Tuesday podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned, and our whole archive of programming is there. And, of course, we're also on YouTube or wherever you stream and or find your podcasts or your media. We want to thank our friends while you're at focusgroupradio.com. You can click on the deep discount logo. It's their Cyber Week sale, and of course, it's a great time to start some of your holiday shopping if you do that. I picked this week the Little Rascals, which is the complete collection, Centennial edition. John picked a thriller, the Changeling.
Changeling, scary movie.
The Changeling, scary movie, and the new release this year, the new release this week is The Offer, which talks about the making of The Godfather. I wanted to ask you when you talked about that. Was there is it fictionalized or is it?
I think it's based on an actual book, which was the historical account of how this all came together. Because it wasn't like a magic thing; it didn't just happen. I mean, a lot of work went into getting the Godfather made.
So cool. So pick that up at deep discount. We want to thank you all again for joining us and be safe this holiday season. I will tell you, driving down through New England and the Mid-Atlantic, I can't tell you how many morons were on their phones weaving all over the roads. So don't text and drive, arrive alive. It's serious. Be careful out there. Have a good week. Take care.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.